Life's funny sometimes, isn't it? It has this sneaky way of testing you right when you feel like you've got nothing left to give. That's exactly how it felt for me back then. My name's Demi. I was 25, trying to figure out who I was in a world that never seemed to slow down or cut me any slack. I had the kind of job that made you question your life choices every single morning. A lifeless, dead-end desk job where the coffee was always cold and the people were even colder. But the real mess, that was at home. Jake and I had been together for 3 years. On the surface, we looked like any normal couple. But behind closed doors, things weren't so pretty. Jake was complicated. Some days, he was the guy who could light up a room, make me laugh until my belly ached. Other days, he shut down completely, acting like I was some kind of nuisance just for existing. We'd argue over money, the future, our differences, even dinner plans. You name it, we fought about it. And the worst part? Half the time I couldn't even remember what started it in the first place. One Thursday evening, I remember it like it was yesterday, we were sitting in that greasy old diner we used to call our place. The air smelled like fried onions and burnt coffee. Classy, I know. We were in the middle of another classic Jake and Demi argument. "Why do you always have to be so damn difficult?" he snapped at me, his voice low but sharp. "Difficult? Are you serious right now? You're the one who shuts down every time I try to talk," I shot back, trying not to raise my voice. But who was I kidding? We were always louder than we meant to be. That night ended just like all the others. Cold silence on the walk home, both of us stuck in our own heads, fuming. I went to bed wondering if this was all there was. Was this love? Was this the life I was supposed to settle for? But little did I know the universe wasn't done with me yet, not even close. Not long after that miserable night, my world collapsed in ways I never saw coming. My parents and I were driving home from a family dinner when everything changed in an instant. 1 second we were laughing, my dad was telling some silly joke like he always did, and the next it was chaos. The sound of metal crunching, glass shattering, tires screeching, and then silence. When I woke up in the hospital, everything hurt. Every breath, every thought, every tiny movement. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the heartbreak. My parents, they didn't make it. I lost them both that night. And as if that wasn't enough, the doctors told me I had spinal damage. My legs wouldn't move. I stared at the ceiling for hours that first night in the hospital, listening to the beeping machines and trying to process the nightmare I had woken up into. I couldn't move. I couldn't cry. I couldn't even think straight. And the worst part? Everyone around me wore the same expression. That look people get when they don't want to tell you the truth. The doctors tried to be gentle. "You'll need extensive rehabilitation, Demi. This isn't a short road." What they didn't say out loud was even louder. There's a chance I'd never walk again. It was in that storm of grief and hopelessness that Jake walked in, his parents following close behind. They looked like they'd been crying, but Jake, he had this strange fire in his eyes. I couldn't tell if it was fear or determination. He sat beside my bed, took my hand, and said something I never expected. "Demi, I know this is the worst time. I know everything's a mess, but I can't hold this in anymore. I love you. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Will you marry me?" I was stunned. I mean, what do you even say in a moment like that? I couldn't walk. I had just lost everything. And now he wanted to marry me? He got down on one knee, right there on the cold, white hospital floor, and held out a ring. "Let me be there for you. Let me take care of you." His parents stood behind him, nodding like they were part of a scene from a movie. I looked at Jake, and for a second, I saw the man I fell in love with, not the one who made me cry over burnt toast or silent treatments. So I said yes. Not because I was sure, not because I had some fairy tale vision of our future, but because in that moment, I needed something to hold on to, and Jake was offering his hand. The wedding wasn't what I had pictured growing up. There was no dance, no walk down the aisle, just a small room, close friends and family, and me in a wheelchair, wearing my mother's favorite earrings. Still, it was beautiful. Not because of the decorations or the music, but because I felt surrounded, at least for a moment, by love. It felt like a new beginning, a new chapter, maybe even a miracle. But miracles have a way of fading when reality creeps in. Not long after we moved into the house, my parents left me, a beautiful old place already set up with accessibility features. Jake changed. He quit his job, saying he needed to care for me full-time, but that care quickly turned into something else. He spent hours playing video games, going out with friends, coming home drunk more often than not. Meanwhile, I was struggling to cook, clean, and shower on my own. I was supposed to be the one recovering, physically and emotionally. Instead, I was doing everything I could just to survive each day. And Jake? He acted like I was the burden. His parents, who used to call me sweetheart and tell me I was family, started giving me side-eye glances. They came over constantly, helped themselves to food, and treated my home like their vacation spot. It felt like I was the outsider in my own house. One afternoon I'd had enough. I was struggling to make a sandwich and Jake walked in, grabbing a beer like it was just any other day. "You know, it must be nice," I snapped, "watching me bust my butt just to get through basic tasks while you play games all day." He scoffed, didn't even look up. "I gave up my job for you," he muttered. I couldn't believe it. "Gave up your job? Jake, you gave up on me." The fight spiraled, just like all the others before. But this one was different. It felt final. And deep in my gut, I knew something was wrong. Something bigger than just laziness or insensitivity. Something darker was hiding beneath the surface. And soon I'd find out just how right I was. At first I tried to brush it off. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the stress and grief were making me see things that weren't really there. But deep down, I knew better. The Jake I married was starting to feel more like a stranger. And his parents? They weren't just overstepping. They were invading. They'd waltz into the house without knocking, open cabinets like they lived there, and talk to me in that fake sweet voice people use when they don't actually care. The smiles were gone, replaced by passive-aggressive comments and cold stares. It wasn't long before I noticed things disappearing. Little at first, a few dishes from the china cabinet, some decorative pieces my mom loved. I thought maybe I misplaced them, until the day I saw the necklace. It was a strand of pearls, not just any pearls, my mother's pearls. I kept them in a small velvet box in my closet, a piece of her I held onto like a lifeline. One morning, I rolled into the living room and there she was, my mother-in-law, wearing them like they were hers. I couldn't stop the words from tumbling out. "Those are my mom's pearls. Why are you wearing them?" She didn't even flinch, just looked at me and smiled that tight, icy smile. "Oh, these? You must be mistaken, dear. I've had these for years." It felt like a slap. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just wheeled myself back into my room, shut the door, and cried. That was the day something inside me cracked. Not in a bad way, in a necessary way. The kind of break that lets light in. I started paying attention, closely. I noticed the paintings missing from the hallway, the old record player Dad had polished every Sunday gone from the corner of the den. My parents' memory was being erased piece by piece, and no one seemed to care but me. Jake was no help. When I confronted him, he waved it off. "You're imagining things, Demi. Mom would never take anything from you." But his eyes didn't match his words. They darted. He was lying, and I knew it. That night, I called Lily. Lily had been my massage therapist for months, someone who came by regularly to help with my pain and circulation. But more than that, she became a friend, the kind of friend who sees past your smile and knows when something's wrong. I trusted her, completely. She listened as I poured out everything, the theft, the treatment, the lies, and then she said something that changed everything. "Demi, if we're going to prove anything, we need evidence. What if we planted some bugs around the house?" At first I thought she was joking. Bugs? Like in spy movies? But she wasn't. Lily was dead serious. And to be honest, so was I. Desperation will make you consider things you never imagined yourself doing. So we did it. Lily was a wizard with tech. She brought over tiny recorders, the kind you'd never notice if you weren't looking for them. We tucked them behind photo frames, under furniture, even in the fake plant by the entryway. And then we waited. For days, I felt like I was living in a suspense novel. Every moment, every conversation felt like a trap waiting to be sprung. Jake and his parents went about their days like normal, eating my food, watching my TV, treating my house like a hotel. But I kept my cool. I acted like nothing had changed. Then came the night we pressed play. Lily and I sat on my bed, her laptop open, headphones plugged in, heart pounding. The first few minutes were uneventful. The clink of dishes, casual chatter. But then came the gold. Jake's voice. She's basically out of the picture. Once she's in that facility, the house is ours. We'll live like royalty." His mother laughed. "That jewelry sale was just the beginning. There's so much more we can get from her inheritance." Then his father, usually the quiet one, spoke. "Keep your voice down. We don't want her catching on. The sooner she's gone, the better." Lily paused the recording. We sat in stunned silence. It wasn't just theft. It wasn't just cruelty. They were planning to get rid of me. "I can't believe this," I whispered. "They want me gone." Lily squeezed my hand. "Not on my watch. You're not alone, Demi. We're going to fight this." I wanted to scream, cry, break something, but more than anything, I wanted justice. And I wasn't going to wait for it. The next few days were a blur. We duplicated the recordings, backed them up in cloud storage, emailed them to my lawyer. I contacted a disability support service and told them everything: the emotional abuse, the missing items, the isolation tactics. They agreed to send a team out for an inspection, unannounced. The night before they arrived, I played the role of polite housewife. I smiled through dinner, listened to Jake brag about some stupid online game, watched his mom pretend to care about my well-being. Inside, I was boiling, but I didn't show it, because tomorrow the truth would come out, and I was ready. At first, I tried to convince myself that things would get better, that Jake was just adjusting, that grief had messed with his head as much as it had mine. But day by day, that illusion started to crumble. The man I married, the one who got down on one knee beside my hospital bed, was slipping away. Or maybe that version of him never really existed. Either way, what I was left with was a guy who barely looked at me unless he needed something. He stopped pretending to help. Meals were on me. Laundry, too. If I dropped something, he wouldn't even glance up from his screen. He'd say things like, "You're not helpless," with this smug little smile that made me want to scream, as if pretending I wasn't in a wheelchair would somehow make it disappear. And the worst part? The shame. The quiet humiliation that crept in every time I had to ask for help, only to be met with eye rolls or sarcastic comments. "You know," he said one night, while I tried to transfer myself from my chair to the bed, "some people are actually grateful when their partner sacrifices everything for them." Sacrifices? He hadn't sacrificed a damn thing, but I bit my tongue. Again. Then came the visits. Jake's parents started showing up more and more. At first, I thought they were checking in, maybe even trying to reconnect. But that illusion shattered fast. They began making themselves a little too comfortable, opening drawers, commenting on the way I kept things, complaining about how lonely Jake must feel being trapped in the house with a cripple. Yes, I heard that. Whispered in the kitchen when they thought I couldn't hear. And then the looks, the quiet judgments. I'd catch them eyeing my chair like it offended them, like it reminded them I didn't fit the life they wanted for their son. I tried to talk to Jake about it, but he brushed me off. "You're being paranoid," he said. "They mean well." No, they didn't. I could feel it. One morning, after they'd spent the night, uninvited of course, I noticed something missing. My mom's pearl necklace. A piece I hadn't even worn since the funeral. I kept it in her old jewelry box for safekeeping. A tiny memory of her that I could hold on to. Gone. I searched the drawers, the bathroom, even the laundry room. Nothing. And then, that afternoon, I saw her, Jake's mother, wearing them. My mother's pearls hanging proudly around her neck like they belonged to her. My blood turned to ice. I confronted her, my voice shaking with disbelief. "Those pearls? They're my mother's." She didn't even flinch. "Are they?" she said coolly. "I've had these for years. You must be confused." Confused? I could feel the fury rising in my chest, but I didn't let it out. Not yet. Instead, I nodded and wheeled away. My mother's pearls weren't the only thing missing. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing other things. Small at first. A painting gone from the hallway. A silver set missing from the dining cabinet. Expensive dishes that were part of my parents' collection. Vanished. It was like living in a house that was slowly being hollowed out piece by piece. I felt violated, betrayed, powerless. But I wasn't alone. Lily, my massage therapist and one of the few people I still trusted, noticed the tension during one of her visits. She had this calm energy, but that day she looked at me with concern. "What's going on, Demi? Your body's tight, like panic tight." I broke down, right there on the massage table. I told her everything. About Jake, his parents, the missing items, the way they treated me like I was a guest in my own home. I didn't hold anything back. And when I was done, Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned in. "We need proof," she whispered. "You're not crazy, but you need to catch them in the act." I stared at her. What are you suggesting? We plant a few bugs, audio recorders. You'll know exactly what's going on when you're not in the room. It sounded like something out of a spy movie, but honestly, I was desperate. And desperation makes you brave. So we did it. Lily brought over a few small devices, things I wouldn't have even known existed, and helped me hide them in key spots. The living room, kitchen, hallway. Even Jake's so-called office, which was really just where he gamed and complained about me to his friends. Then we waited. And what we heard, it shook me to my core, Jake's voice laughing. She's practically out of the picture, he said one night, while chatting with his father. She's stuck. She can't even get out the front door without help. Everything here is basically ours now. His mom's voice chimed in. That jewelry sale was just the start. You wouldn't believe how much those pearls fetched. And his father? We've barely scratched the surface. Once she's out of the way for good, this whole place is ours. Out of the way! For good. Those words echoed in my ears, cold and sharp. They weren't just stealing from me. They were plotting something worse. They wanted me gone. Lily and I sat in my bedroom, staring at the playback in stunned silence. I was shaking. Not from fear, not exactly, from rage, from betrayal. They're vultures, Lily said, feeding off you. I need to do something, I replied, voice low but steady. I can't let this continue. Then let's finish what we started, she said. You've got the truth on your side now. I nodded. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. I wasn't going to be their victim anymore. Not 1 second longer. From the moment I heard their voices on those recordings, something shifted in me. It wasn't just about anger anymore. It was clarity. Cold, undeniable clarity. I saw everything for what it really was. Jake wasn't my partner. His parents weren't my family. They were opportunists. Leeches. They had mistaken my silence for weakness, my disability for defeat. But they had underestimated me. I didn't tell Jake what I knew. Not yet. Instead, I smiled more, played the role of the weary, clueless wife. The kind who didn't ask too many questions. The kind who couldn't possibly be plotting anything. Because the truth, I was. The next morning, over a lukewarm breakfast, none of them bothered to help prepare, I started making calls. Quiet ones. Strategic ones. I reached out to a lawyer, one of my parents' old friends. A man I barely remembered from my childhood, but who remembered me. Demi, his voice crackled over the speaker. Your mother talked about you all the time. I need your help, I said, wasting no time. I think something terrible is happening in my home. Within hours, he had a team lined up. People who understood estate fraud, elder abuse, even criminal intent. We began the paper trail, the evidence archive, and most importantly, plans for a surprise audit of the estate inventory. But that wasn't all. I also contacted a disability advocate from the local city services, someone who could evaluate whether my rights were being violated. And spoiler alert, they were. Removing ramps, denying me access to the kitchen, and isolating me from basic parts of my own home. That wasn't just cruel. It was illegal. The plan was simple. Wait for the perfect moment to strike. Let them think they'd won. And so I waited, biding my time. Listening to more recordings, watching as Jake grew more smug, more careless. I even caught his mother stuffing what looked like one of my father's old watches into her purse. She didn't know I was watching. She never looked me in the eye anymore. Then one morning, I woke up to find something horrifying. The ramps were gone. Every last one. Gone from the front steps, the backyard, even the small portable one I used to get from the kitchen to the living room. Without them, I was trapped, like a prisoner in a beautiful house that no longer belonged to me. I wheeled myself into the dining room, where Jake and his parents were pretending to eat breakfast like nothing had happened. Why would you remove the ramps? I asked, my voice calm but firm. Jake's mother looked up with a sugary sweet smile that sent chills down my spine. It's for your safety, dear. We were worried you might slip. You understand, right? Oh, I understood perfectly. Of course, I said. Thank you for your concern. That same day, the city service team arrived, unannounced, just as planned. Jake's face went pale the second he saw the official badges. His father tried to play it cool, cracking a joke about building code violations, but no one was laughing. This is a wellness and access inspection, the lead representative explained. We're here to assess living conditions and ensure compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. They took photos, measured thresholds, noted the absence of ramps, interviewed me separately, asked hard questions. Jake's parents suddenly had somewhere to be, but it wasn't over. An hour later, my lawyer arrived with a second team, this time with inventory documents. the ones created after my parents died, listing every item in the house that was part of the estate. Every heirloom, every piece of jewelry, every piece of art. "We're going to verify that everything is still here," he announced. Jake objected, of course, loudly, but it didn't matter. As the list was read, room by room, the lies began to unravel. The missing pearls, the silver, the antique dishes, a dozen things that could no longer be explained away. My lawyer turned to me. "Do you have documentation of suspicious behavior?" I looked him in the eye. "Better, I have recordings." And just like that, I played the clips. Their voices echoed through the house, the greedy laughs, the scheming words, the ugly truths they never thought would see the light of day. Jake's mother broke first. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "We didn't mean for it to go this far," she sobbed. "It was just, we thought—" "You thought I was helpless," I said coldly. Jake sat there, silent for once, his jaw clenched, his eyes staring at the table. The authorities were called. Police officers escorted them out of the house while the investigation moved forward. Theft, fraud, conspiracy. It was all there. Jake didn't say a word to me until the next day. "You set us up," he spat. "No," I replied. "You did that all on your own." I filed for divorce immediately, and yes, I pressed charges. Some people said I should have just let it go, started over quietly. But no, this wasn't just about justice. It was about closure, about reclaiming everything they tried to take from me, my dignity, my security, my voice. The trial was quick. The evidence was overwhelming. They pled guilty, all three of them. Jake tried to throw his parents under the bus, but it didn't work. His voice on the recordings was unmistakable. The judge ordered restitution. What couldn't be returned was paid back through insurance claims and estate protections. My lawyer saw to it that not a penny of my parents' legacy would end up in their pockets. And when it was done, when the dust had settled and the house was finally mine again, I sat on the porch, staring out at the garden my mom used to tend, and I cried. Not from sadness, not from pain, from release. I had survived a car crash, a spinal injury, the death of my parents, emotional abuse, betrayal, and theft. And still, here I was. Still me. Still standing, even if not on my own 2 feet just yet. But that was coming, and I could feel it. There's a strange stillness that settles over a house after a storm has passed. A silence that feels like healing. After everything, the lies, the theft, the betrayal, I found myself alone again. But it wasn't the same kind of alone. This time, I chose it. The house, once filled with deceitful whispers and fake affection, was now mine. Really mine. It echoed with absence, sure, but also with possibility. The first thing I did, I brought back the ramps. Not just to move around, though that mattered, but to reclaim the space. Every screw drilled in, every slope reinstalled, felt like I was stitching together pieces of my independence. Then came the small steps. Literally. Physical therapy had always been part of my recovery plan, but I'd let it fade into the background when life got too chaotic. Now it became my lifeline. My therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Carla, believed in tough love. "You've got a choice, Demi," she said one morning, watching me struggle with a walker. "You can survive, or you can fight." So I fought. Every step, every ache, every fall, I fought. The first time I stood for more than 10 seconds without assistance, I cried. Carla cried. Even the janitor walking by gave me a fist bump. It sounds small, I know, but to me it felt like flying. Each week brought more progress. My legs trembled less. My arms grew stronger. And with every inch of mobility I regained, I also recovered pieces of me. But recovery wasn't just physical. Emotionally, I was wrecked. There were days I couldn't even look in the mirror without feeling waves of shame and rage. Not because of how I looked, but because of how I'd been treated, how long I had let it go on. So I started therapy. Real, soul-deep therapy. The kind that makes you dig into the past and pull up every splinter so the wound can finally heal. My therapist, Dr. Lanning, said something in our third session that stuck with me. "Forgiveness," she said gently, "isn't about them. It's about freeing you." That messed me up for a while. Forgive Jake? His parents? Really? But she was right. Holding on to the anger was like letting them live rent-free in my head. I didn't want that. Not anymore. So I let it go. Not with a grand ceremony or a weepy declaration. Just one quiet morning, sitting in the garden, watching the wind move through the trees, I whispered, "I forgive you, but I never forget." And just like that, something inside me unclenched. The next few months were a blur of progress, rebuilding friendships, decorating the house with pieces that were mine, laughing, really laughing, with Lily, who stayed by my side through it all like a guardian angel disguised as a friend. "You're glowing," she said one afternoon as we painted the living room a soft lavender. "It's like you came back to life." "I think I did," I replied, "and this time I'm not letting anyone dim it." Then one day, out of nowhere, Jake called. His voice was shaky, desperate. "I miss you, Demi. I messed up. I was scared and stupid. Can't we just start fresh?" I almost laughed. The nerve. "You're a chapter I've closed," I said, my tone calm. "A footnote, that's all." Click. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel anything, really. And that's when I knew I was truly free. He tried again, of course. Flowers, handwritten letters, even had the audacity to send me a playlist titled Us. I dropped it all in the trash because I had a new love now, painting. It started as a way to fill my evenings, something to do with my hands while the TV droned on in the background. But then I started using color to express feelings I couldn't put into words. My grief, deep stormy blues. My anger, bold reds with sharp black lines. My hope, soft greens and glowing golds. Before long, my easel became a sanctuary. My brush, a voice. I painted my parents from memory. I painted the night sky. I painted the moment I stood on my feet, unsteady but powerful. People started noticing. Lily posted one of my pieces on her social media, and within days I had strangers messaging me, asking if I sold my art, if I did commissions, if I had a gallery. And just like that, I had a side hustle, a passion, a purpose. I turned the guest room into a studio, swapped out the old dusty treadmill Jake never used for shelves of canvas and paints. It smelled like turpentine and lavender and possibility. And every time I rolled into that room, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not long after that, I was invited to speak at a local women's recovery group. At first, I wasn't sure what I could offer, but Lily insisted. "Just tell your story," she said. "You don't know who needs to hear it." So I did. I stood, yes, stood, in front of a room full of women, most older than me, all weathered in their own ways, and I told them everything. The accident, the betrayal, the manipulation, the rage, the rising. When I finished, there were tears, hugs. One woman whispered in my ear, "You reminded me I'm not broken, just bruised." And that made every step worth it. Now when I wake up in the morning, I stretch my legs, slowly, carefully, and I smile. I drink my coffee in the garden where my mother's roses still bloom. I light a candle by my father's photo and whisper updates about my day. I paint, I move, I live. And I do it all with grace and courage and a quiet kind of joy that no one can take from me. So if you're listening to this and you feel like your world has ended, maybe it has. But that doesn't mean your life is over. It just means the next chapter is about to begin. And trust me, it can be the best one yet.